Cat Smith is now the Shadow Minister for Women and Equalities, of course. And a Labour victory over the Tories in May 2015. So fantastic. A fantastic campaigner for all things good in our movement, Cat Smith.
I'm Cat Smith, I'm the Member of Parliament for Lancaster and Fleetwood, one of the very few Labour MPs to take a seat off the Tories in May. And I've got a few thoughts about how I managed that. And I'll let you into a secret. I didn't always stick to the script. I stayed true to myself.
Disgrace.
I also got a billboard in the middle of Lancaster that said I was against cuts as well, just so there was no ambiguity. Because I'm very proud to be an anti-austerity MP. And I'm proud to say that as well as being part of the Labour movement, I'm also part of an anti-austerity movement. And for too long, the Labour Party has been sitting on the sidelines of the anti-austerity movement that has been growing out there in the country. And I think we missed a trick. However, there was one MP who didn't miss a trick. He'd been an MP for quite a while, sat on the backbenches for 30 plus years. And he was engaged in the anti-austerity movement. And if you'd been to any of the People's Assembly events up and down the country, you may have heard from an MP, a Labour backbench MP called Jeremy Corbyn. And I think it's through Jeremy's engagement with the anti-austerity movement and his commitment towards a society as I'd like to see it, a society where we invest in people and we put people before profit, that meant when it came to the leadership election, and I'll be honest, when I walked into the Parliamentary Labour Party office to nominate Jeremy, I did so with enthusiasm. I was fully behind his politics, don't get me wrong. But I thought we'd be pretty lucky to get on the ballot paper. And then we got on the ballot paper, and I think I had a conversation with Owen around some point at that point, and we were kind of worried we were going to get absolutely ground into the dirt, and we'd come last, and it would mean that the left was dead. However, it didn't take us too long to realise we might not come last. And we thought, well, this is all right, we'll come third. It proves that the left's making a comeback. And then the weeks and months went by, and it looked increasingly like, flaming heck, we might win. And I couldn't be happier to have played a very small part in making sure that we got Jeremy Corbyn onto the ballot paper. Because it's through Jeremy's politics that I think we can win in 2020. Because the people that have been hit hard by austerity are the people that shouldn't be being hit at all. If we look at what austerity is doing, we are punishing the poorest people in society. Women are being hit harder. Poorer people, our public sector workers, disabled people are being hit hardest, our young people. I represent a constituency that's got 2 universities in it, and as a marginal seat MP, my majority is 1,200. I do a lot of door knocking, and I think that it's important for me to be on the doorsteps and listening to people. When I knock on doors of young people, no one said to me, I'm not voting Labour because you're way too left wing. People said to me, I don't really understand what the Labour Party is. How are you different from the Tories? What, you don't care about me, your politicians are all in it for themselves. People's cynicism around politics was just so high that it was almost difficult to break through, particularly amongst younger voters. Someone made the point, I said, look, I'm 29 and, I'm 30 now, but I was 29 at the election, and I get what you're going through, and I'm pretty annoyed too, maybe use stronger words on occasions, about the fact that there's a generation here that have been absolutely hammered. The EMA was cut, the tuition fees were trebled. It should have been really clear that the Tories were not on the side of the young, but we had yet to convince them that Labour was on their side and going to fight their corner. Which is why during the Labour leadership election, when I saw young people queuing to go into the rallies, and I spoke at one in Manchester, and it was a Saturday night on the outskirts of Manchester in what looked like an industrial zone, and there were young people queuing round the block trying to get in. In London, we saw young people trying to clamber through the windows to try and get into a political rally, and they say we're not interested in politics. Well, I think that Jeremy Corbyn may have been the oldest candidate on the ballot paper, but he was the only one who really engaged young people because he was talking about austerity and why it was doing over young people, and it shouldn't be that way. And it is through this that I believe that we will go forward to win a general election in 2020. But to do that, we need to engage those new members that have joined. And there may be many of you in this room who have joined the Labour Party very recently. And maybe many of you are coming back to the Labour Party. I want to say, welcome home. I'm sorry that it took so long. Never again can we let down the people that should be our Labour Party members. Never again can we forget who we are and where we come from. And for me, that's really personal. My grandmother was a trade unionist. But she was a trade unionist in a shipyard, which was full of male workers. She broke the mould, and I stand on her shoulders. And my dad is a trade unionist. He failed his 11 plus. He left school at 16 to take an apprenticeship, but he always wanted to study history. And it was through his trade union and through the education department at his trade union that he accessed night school courses to do his A-levels and took part in an open university degree that wouldn't have been possible without a Labour government. We've got a proud history in the Labour movement of ensuring that everyone, regardless of how much money you've got, can achieve your potential. And it's on these shoulders that I will do my best as a Labour MP to build on these traditions and do things for the future. Because we've now back in the situation that young people don't really have any hope. I met with some constituents who have joined the army, not because they want to serve their country particularly, but because they feel it's their only way of getting an education that they can afford. If you want to join the army, then that should be a choice, but you should never feel you have to if that's your only option for an education. We need to do better by our young people, and we need to ensure that our Labour Party members feel included. We cannot go out of here and back to our constituency Labour parties and hand our new members a pile of leaflets and ask them to shove them through letterboxes or ask them to come canvassing. We've got to engage people in policy making, because policy is made best when it's made by the people whose lives it affects. And I do not want my policy made in think tanks and ivory towers. I want my policies made in the communities that it will affect. I'm going to say no more machine politics, no more focus group orientated ivory towers policy making. It's about the Labour movement, and the Labour Party has played a proud role in the Labour movement in the past, and I believe under a Jeremy Corbyn leadership and with your support we'll continue to have a very bright future in ensuring that once again we are a Labour movement. Thank you.